Madara Uchiha. This guy didn't just fight wars, he rewrote the rules of the entire ninja world. As one of the strongest Uchiha in history, co-founder of the Hidden Leaf Village, and eternal rival of Hashirama Senju, Madara turned every battlefield into his personal chessboard. Their bond, two childhood friends who became leaders, then enemies, plays out like a Shakespearean tragedy of loyalty, ideals, and destiny. Their final showdown at the Valley of the End remains one of the most iconic moments in all of Naruto. Imagine it. Madara's colossal Susanoo clashing against Hashirama's gigantic thousand-armed Buddha. The ground quakes, mountains crumble, and the sky itself splits open. But in the end, Madara falls, defeated, but never truly gone. Because Madara, being Madara, had one last insane move up his sleeve. He literally bites off a piece of Hashirama's flesh and eats it. Yeah, that's not a typo. Gross? Definitely. Genius? Absolutely. That one wild decision set off a chain of events that would reshape ninja history. The cells of Hashirama, the first Hokage, fused into Madara's body, giving him absurd regenerative powers and laying the foundation for his future resurrection. Over the decades, those cells slowly integrated, allowing Madara to awaken the Rinnegan, an evolution so powerful it made him god tier. In short, the man spent decades just waiting to update his stats. With Hashirama's cells, Madara gained near immortality, access to wood release, Mokuton, and the ability to control the 10 tails once he regained the Rinnegan. This made him strong enough to take on the entire allied shinobi force solo. Of course, merging two bloodlines of this scale isn't all sunshine and power-ups. The balance of chakra between Uchiha and Senju cells was dangerously unstable. A single misstep could lead to total self-destruction. But when you can call down meteors from space, who really cares about a little side effect? Yamato. Think of him as the world's most overqualified babysitter. Every time Naruto loses control, Yamato's there, calm as ever, putting the 9 tails back in its cage like he's tucking in a cranky toddler. Need a base camp? He builds a wooden house in seconds. If Konoha had Airbnb, Yamato would have been a 5-star superhost. But behind that calm, dependable smile lies a dark origin story. His real name is Tenzo, and as a child, he was kidnapped by Orochimaru for one of his twisted experiments. Out of 60 kids injected with Hashirama's DNA, only Tenzo survived. That experiment granted him a diluted version of Hashirama's wood release, a power so rare that even the Hokage struggled to master it. With that power, Yamato could manipulate wood to build, restrain, and heal. His most vital role, though, was containing Naruto's 9 tails chakra, a few hand seals, and boom! A massive wooden cage snaps shut around Kurama like a divine timeout. Those same Hashirama cells also gave him enhanced endurance and chakra reserves, enough to handle high-risk missions and extended battles. But let's be real, Yamato's strength was nowhere near Hashirama's. If Hashirama's power was an ancient forest, Yamato's was a bonsai tree, small, refined, but still impressive in its own right. Every time Yamato pushed his limits, the strain nearly drained his life force. He had to rely on seals and charms to keep the 9 tails suppressed. Yet even with those limitations, he stood as living proof of how potent Hashirama's DNA truly was. That bloodline was so overpowered, even a weakened copy could keep the most dangerous tailed beast in check. Obito Uchiha. Once a cheerful kid dreaming of becoming Hokage, Obito's story is one of the most tragic transformations in anime history. His descent began during the mission at Kanabi Bridge, when half his body was crushed beneath a massive boulder. Any normal ninja would have died instantly. But this is where fate, or rather, Madara, stepped in. Madara saved him and replaced his shattered body with artificial tissue made from Hashirama's cells and a portion of Zetsu's organic matter. The result? Obito became a literal hybrid, part Uchiha, part Hashirama, and part plant. Let that sink in. A walking mashup of the two most powerful bloodlines. Wrapped in organic armor, those Hashirama cells granted Obito near-instant regeneration and ridiculous endurance. Even after taking fatal blows, he'd heal like nothing happened. He could sprout wooden spikes or tendrils from his body mid-battle, turning defense into offense. When paired with his Kamui ability, he became a near-invincible ghost, slipping between dimensions. Untouchable yet deadly, he was like a living cheat code. But this power came at a price. Obito's control over wood release was crude and unstable, more brute force than finesse. Worse, his body constantly battled against the Hashirama cells and Zetsu tissue inside him. Every major injury triggered waves of excruciating pain, And the more he pushed his limits, the more his body rebelled. He was powerful, yes, but also a prisoner inside his own armor. Still, without those cells, Obito wouldn't have survived long enough to become the masked puppet master behind Akatsuki or the instigator of the Fourth Great Ninja War. The ultimate irony? The same DNA that once symbolized peace and growth, Hashirama's gift to the world, was twisted into a weapon that nearly ended it. Sasuke Uchiha. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, Sasuke faced one of his closest brushes with death. At one point, Madara literally impaled him through the chest, leaving him lifeless on the battlefield. If Kabuto hadn't shown up, that would have been the end of his story. But fate, once again, had other plans. Kabuto saved Sasuke using the same legendary source of power we've been talking about all along, Hashirama's cells. By infusing those cells directly into Sasuke's body, Kabuto didn't just heal him, he rebooted him. The vitality and life energy within Hashirama's DNA were so intense that they jump-started Sasuke's dying body, restoring him to full strength. And that wasn't all. This sudden surge of life force put him in perfect condition to receive the Six Paths power from Hagoromo Otsutsuki, which ultimately awakened Sasuke's Rinnegan. You could say that Hashirama's DNA acted like a divine bridge, linking mortal Sasuke to godlike potential. Unlike Naruto, though, Sasuke didn't retain those cells permanently. They worked like an emergency boost, a one-time life-saving injection rather than a permanent power-up. After the battle, the influence of the cells faded away, leaving no trace of wood release or regenerative ability behind. Still, it's worth noting that this brief connection was enough to pull him from the brink of death and elevate him to one of the strongest beings in the ninja world. Of course, that process wasn't risk-free. We've already seen what happens when you recklessly combine Uchiha and Hashirama DNA: imbalance, chakra rejection, even death. Kabuto had to be extremely precise. If he miscalculated even slightly, Sasuke's body might have exploded or simply rejected the transplant. But luck, or maybe destiny, was on Sasuke's side. His body adapted perfectly, absorbing just enough of Hashirama's life force to stabilize before letting it fade naturally. So in the end, Sasuke's connection to Hashirama's power was like a spark, brief, blinding, and world-changing, a reminder that even the proud Uchiha needed a little bit of Senju to survive the storm. Naruto Uzumaki. After the final battle at the Valley of the End, Naruto lay broken, one arm gone, his body barely holding together. But where most would have seen the end, Naruto's story turned into a new beginning. Thanks to Tsunade, the legendary medical ninja and granddaughter of Hashirama Senju, he received a new arm made entirely from Hashirama's cells. It wasn't just a prosthetic, it was a living limb, pulsing with life energy. That arm symbolized more than just survival. It was the physical inheritance of Hashirama's dream, the will of fire, passed from one generation to the next. Naruto didn't need Hashirama's strength to destroy his enemies. He needed it to heal the world that centuries of hatred had shattered. The same cells that once fueled Madara's ambition and Danzo's corruption now helped Naruto rebuild, not destroy. Naruto never used the wood release or any fancy Mokuton techniques. That wasn't his style. What he inherited from Hashirama wasn't just DNA, it was purpose. Like Hashirama, he believed in peace through understanding, not domination. He became the kind of Hokage that Hashirama once dreamed of, one who united people with empathy, not fear. In Boruto's era, Naruto's arm remains a quiet reminder of that legacy, a fusion of past and future, science and spirit. It connects him not only to Hashirama but also to every soul who carried the will of fire before him. From the first Hokage's dream to Naruto's reality, the message stays the same. True power isn't in bloodlines or jutsu. It's in the heart that never gives up. Danzo Shimura. If there were a dictionary entry for shadow politics, Danzo's face would be printed right next to it. Leader of the secretive Anbu division, Root. Danzo always believed he was the one truly protecting Konoha, even if it meant doing unspeakable things. To him, peace could only exist through control, manipulation, and sacrifice, but the lengths he went to achieve that are downright horrifying. Danzo's obsession with power and security pushed him to make one of the most extreme decisions in the series. He had Orochimaru graft Hashirama's cells into his right arm, then implanted 10 Sharingan eyes into it. Yes, 10. Picture that. An old man walking around with a Frankenstein arm full of Uchiha eyeballs and Senju DNA. A literal biohazard. The results were as grotesque as they were powerful. Thanks to Hashirama's cells, Danzo's arm gained self-healing abilities and could sustain the massive chakra consumption required for the forbidden Uchiha technique Izanagi, a jutsu that allows the user to rewrite reality itself. Every time Danzo used Izanagi, he could negate death, turning lethal attacks into illusions. Normally, that would kill any ninja after one use. But with Hashirama's regenerative DNA, he could spam Izanagi multiple times in a single fight. It was like giving a man infinite continues in a video game, at least for a while. However, there's always a cost. The same Hashirama cells that empowered him also began to devour him from the inside. His arm became monstrous, grotesquely veined and pulsing, and could barely stay stable. Each time he activated Izanagi, one Sharingan would permanently burn out, and his body inched closer to collapse. By the time he faced Sasuke, Danzo's entire existence had become a ticking bomb of stolen power and fragile ambition. What's ironic is that Danzo justified all his cruelty by saying it was for the village. Yet in the end, he was consumed by the very greed he claimed to despise. His downfall wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. Danzo proved that no matter how much you steal, graft, or manipulate, you can't control life and death forever. Even Hashirama's godlike DNA couldn't save a man drowning in his own ambition. Kabuto Yakushi, aka Orochimaru 2.0. If Orochimaru was the mad scientist prototype, Kabuto was the refined version, colder, smarter, and far more dangerous. A master of medical ninjutsu and human anatomy, Kabuto didn't just study power, he became it. After years of serving under Orochimaru, Kabuto eventually decided he didn't want to live in anyone's shadow. So, in true Naruto villain fashion, he absorbed Orochimaru's remains and started rebuilding himself. His next step? You guessed it, Hashirama's cells. By fusing those cells with his own, Kabuto gained insane regeneration and vitality. Cuts, stabs, explosions, none of it mattered anymore. He could heal from almost anything in seconds. But he didn't stop there. Kabuto went further, mastering Sage Mode, merging it with his enhanced DNA to create one of the most terrifying hybrids in the series. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, his power bordered on immortality. He could heal mid-battle, reattach limbs, and even regenerate from near-total destruction. Combine that with his snake abilities, and Kabuto became a literal bioweapon, a serpentine sage with near-limitless endurance. What made Kabuto different from Orochimaru, though, was his focus. He didn't crave immortality for its own sake, he wanted evolution, perfection. Hashirama's DNA acted like the glue that stabilized all the mutations in his body. It was the backbone that held together his mixture of snake, sage, and human elements. Without it, Kabuto would have fallen apart, both literally and mentally. But even he wasn't immune to the side effects. The more power he added, the less human he became. His body, mind, and identity blurred into something unrecognizable, a monster who had to lose everything before finding himself again. In the end, Kabuto's journey is one of irony. He chased power through the DNA of gods, only to realize true strength came from self-acceptance. Still, you can't deny one fact. Hashirama's cells turned him into a near-immortal monster. One that even Itachi Uchiha had to use genjutsu to stop. Orochimaru. Let's talk about the man who started half the cursed science projects in the Naruto world. The dark genius, the serpent of ambition, and the embodiment of, just because you can doesn't mean you should. If there's a villain who represents curiosity gone too far, it's him. Orochimaru was once one of the legendary Sannin, a war hero, a brilliant ninja, and a former student of the third Hokage. But his obsession with immortality and forbidden knowledge consumed him. To Orochimaru, human bodies were just vessels, tools for experiments, and when he discovered Hashirama's DNA, he realized he'd found the holy grail of ninja biology. To Orochimaru, Hashirama was perfection. A being who could heal instantly, live unnaturally long, and command nature itself. So of course, Orochimaru wanted a piece of that. Literally, after obtaining Hashirama's remains, he infused those cells into his own body. The result? He gained monstrous regenerative abilities, an unnaturally long lifespan, and resistance to almost any wound. There are scenes where he's sliced open, stabbed, burned, and yet he slithers out of his own skin like nothing happened. It's like every cell in his body refuses to die. He even managed to use a warped form of wood release, though his version looked twisted and grotesque, more like cursed vines than elegant trees. That alone shows how different Orochimaru's approach was. while Hashirama's power represented harmony with nature. Orochimaru's version was corruption through it. Every experiment brought him closer to immortality but also pushed him further from humanity. His body began to rot under the strain of endless transplants and cursed techniques. The very DNA that kept him alive also kept him in constant decay, forcing him to jump from host to host like a parasite trying to outrun death. In the end, Hashirama's cells didn't make Orochimaru a god, they made him a prisoner of his own ambition. Yet, somehow, he always survives. Even death itself seems bored of chasing him. If anyone's proof that science and obsession can coexist in the creepiest way possible, it's Orochimaru. Guruguru. If you thought Orochimaru's experiments were bizarre, buckle up. Guruguru looks like a walking corkscrew made of wood, a literal spiral-faced being who could double as Halloween decor. But underneath that weird design hides a surprisingly critical character. Created from Hashirama's cells by Madara, Guruguru served as a kind of living armor and support system. When Obito was crushed during the Kanabi Bridge mission, it was Guruguru who wrapped around his broken body, acting like an exoskeleton made of living wood. This suit allowed Obito to move, fight, and even perform jutsu while he healed. Think of it as a combination of a medical life support machine, a power amplifier, and a tank, all fused into one. The Hashirama cells gave Guruguru incredible regenerative power, chakra capacity, and the ability to manipulate wood release on his own. He could sprout trees, restrain enemies, and even form massive wooden arms for combat. For a while, he and Obito fought as a single entity, half man, half tree, all chaos. But like everything born from Hashirama's cells, Guruguru had limits. His strength depended on whoever he merged with. Alone, he wasn't that dangerous, fragile, even, but when combined with someone powerful like Obito, he became a terrifying force of nature. It's kind of poetic. Actually, Guruguru existed because of Madara's obsession with controlling life. Yet he ended up helping a boy who would later betray Madara's entire plan. Hashirama's cells, once again, ended up shaping history in ways their creator never imagined. Then we have White Zetsu. Or more accurately, the army of White Zetsus. These weren't individuals, they were mass-produced soldiers, clones crafted from Hashirama's DNA and the energy of the divine tree. If Orochimaru was a mad scientist, Madara was a full-blown industrialist, turning godlike DNA into an assembly line of biological weapons. Each White Zetsu had a humanoid form made of plant-like material, could mimic chakra signatures, and burrow underground to spy on enemies. They could even disguise themselves as other shinobi, infiltrating entire armies without being noticed. In theory, they were perfect: infinite stamina, instant healing, and no fear of death. In practice, not so much. They were weak. Like knockoff Hashirama's mass-produced for quantity over quality. Their wood release was limited and crude. Their combat ability mediocre. But their real danger lay in their numbers and stealth. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, they infiltrated the allied shinobi forces and turned friends into enemies through perfect impersonation. Entire squads fell apart in confusion, not realizing they were fighting clones born from the first Hokage's DNA. It's tragic, really. The same life force that once built forests and healed wounds was corrupted into a weapon of deception and destruction. Hashirama's cells, meant to symbolize harmony, ended up being the foundation for one of the darkest legacies in ninja history, an army of artificial life. Soulless and disposable. Madara didn't just clone a man, he cloned an idea, stripped of its humanity. Finally, let's talk about a lesser-known figure from the Boruto era, Victor. The synthetic genius of Kara. Victor is proof that even in the next generation, humanity's obsession with Hashirama's power never really ended. A wealthy businessman and former ninja, Victor used his medical conglomerate as a front for experiments involving artificial life and regeneration. His ultimate goal? To recreate the God Tree, the same divine source that birthed the 10 tails and the chakra fruit. And naturally, his experiments once again involved the infamous cells of Hashirama. By merging those cells with technology, Victor sought to mass-produce power, creating living weapons and new forms of life. In battle, he could manipulate the terrain itself, using chakra-conducting wires and hidden seals to trap his enemies. His regeneration was insane. Burn him, stab him, or slice off a limb, and it would regrow seconds later. He wasn't the strongest member of Kara, but he was one of the most cunning. Victor fought with strategy, turning every environment into a battlefield he could control. But like all who try to play God, his arrogance was his downfall. He thought he could deceive Jigen and Yamato, hoarding forbidden research for himself. It didn't end well. Koji Kashin burned him alive with the flames of truth. Even as his body regenerated, the fire kept consuming him, symbolizing how his lies and greed finally caught up to him. In the end, Victor's fate wasn't that different from Madara's, Danzo's, or Orochimaru's, consumed by the very power they tried to control. Thanks for watching, and if you made it to the end of this deep dive into Hashirama's legacy, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, which Hashirama enhanced character do you think was the most fascinating, or the most tragic? Until next time, stay curious, stay chaotic, and I'll see you in the next one.